In the 2010 elections, the elections that gave us Republican House Speaker John Boehner instead of Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, there was one chart more than any other that pretty much summed up what happened on Election Day and why. These were the heavyweights when it came to outside spending that election cycle. These were the 10 groups that spent the most money on that election that year. 6 of the 10 groups spent big time on the right, and they were led by the corporate-funded U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which was far and away the biggest spender that year. Almost all of the groups spending on behalf of Republicans in 2010 were corporate-funded groups like that, business groups. The only major spenders on behalf of Democrats that year were unions. That was it. And they only made up 3 of the top 10 spenders. So yeah, one-by-one individual campaign donations by normal humans are nice things. But when you're talking big money in politics, the stuff that adds up really fast and really makes a determinative difference, you either have to be a politically motivated billionaire or you need to be an organization. Big money in politics comes from corporations who disproportionately support Republicans and from unions who disproportionately support Democrats, from organizations. Republicans supporting corporations are totally dominant, right? Their only competition supporting Democrats are the unions. And that means strategically, if you are somehow able to get rid of the unions, to take them out of the mix, then you're able to get rid of the Democratic Party's ability to compete in the big money part of elections. The only thing you'll have left is the corporations spending hand over fist for Republicans, and they'll win every election every time. Over the last half a century, union membership has plummeted across the country. It's gone from about 39% of salaried employees in the 50s to less than 12% now. But even as union membership has waned, there is one place where it's still going strong. Most of the people who are in unions these days are in public sector unions, the unions that represent people who work for things like state and local governments. Private sector unions have taken a beating over the last few decades, but public sector ones are still doing okay. And so Republican legislators all across the country have all gotten religion all at the same time about the importance of killing off public sector unions. The most high profile among them, of course, is Republican Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin, who with the stroke of a pen wiped out 50 years of union rights in the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin was the first state in the country to recognize union rights for public employees generations ago. That's where these rights were born, but Scott Walker got rid of them. Scott Walker did not campaign on getting rid of those rights, but once he got elected, he said he had to. He said he had to kill union rights in Wisconsin to save the state's budget. When the unions said yes to all of the financial concessions that he asked for, and he still wanted to kill them off, it became clear that it wasn't about money. It was not about the budget. He wanted to get rid of union rights in order to get rid of unions altogether. If you get rid of unions altogether, then there is no one funding the other side. There will be no one funding the Democrats when business funds the Republicans. You get rid of union rights, you thereby get rid of unions, you thereby game the whole state. So Democrats cannot compete in the big money part of elections ever again. Pull that off, and Wisconsin didn't just go all red in 2010. Wisconsin will be all Republican, all red from here on out permanently. Democrats will never recover. Don't take my word for it. Take his.
Any chance we'll ever get to be a completely red state and work on these unions?
Oh, yeah.
And become a right to work?
Well, in fact, the big thing...
What can we do to help you?
Well, we're going to start in a couple of weeks with our budget adjustment bill. The first step is we're going to deal with collective bargaining for all public employee unions.
Right.
Because you divide and conquer.
How do we become a completely red state? The first step is the public employee unions. Then divide and conquer. That's what Scott Walker calls it, divide and conquer. Killing the unions is the strategy for turning Wisconsin red, not just for now, but for generations to come in an irreparable way. This is about partisan politics. It is about destroying Democrats' chances of competing with Republicans. It's about eliminating the only source of support for Democrats that can compete with the Republicans' corporate support. It's not about some year's budget. It's not even about jobs. Since he wiped away union rights in Wisconsin, Scott Walker has racked up the single worst jobs record in the entire country. It is not about jobs. It is not about the budget. It is about making Wisconsin permanently Republican. That is what this is about. And Republicans are trying this everywhere. I mean, in Ohio, they were able to do a recall not of the governor, but of the law stripping union rights in Ohio that the Republicans passed. That law, when it got put up for a recall, got recalled by more than 20 points in November. In Wisconsin, they're not recalling the law. They're going to recall the governor. A recall that happens in less than 2 weeks. Now, because this is about money in politics and how badly the corporate-funded Republican side wants the chance to run unopposed from here on out forever, it will not surprise you to hear that the Scott Walker side is outraising the Democratic side more than 25 to 1. 25 to 1 against the Democrats in this recall election that will essentially decide if Democrats ever get to really compete with Republicans in elections again. I mean, if I were the Republicans, I'd spend 100 to 1. I'd spend 1,000 to 1 for a chance at that. Are you kidding? That's the brass ring. And so far, their spending appears to be working, even though the polls are very, very close. The latest polling, I think this is important, shows that all the Republican ad spending has had an effect. 91% of Republican voters in Wisconsin say they are absolutely certain to vote on June 5th. Only 83% of Democrats and independents say the same thing. That's what advertising does. That's what that kind of money does. This race in Wisconsin is the most important race in the country before the presidential election. June 5th. Republicans think they've got it in the bag. And if they do, they are on their way to a permanent structural advantage over the Democratic Party for which there is no repair. There's no way to undo it. And that will affect every race in every partisan election on every ballot, from the race for dog catcher on up to the race for president. Republicans think they have it in the bag. It is less than 2 weeks to the vote in Wisconsin. And at this point, the Democrats should be fighting for this like the existence of their party depends on it. Because it does. Joining us now is Wisconsin State Senator John Erpenbach. Senator Erpenbach, it's nice to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. I'm fired up.
Good.
We are less than 2 weeks away from the recall election in Wisconsin. What can you tell us about what it looks like on the ground there in terms of organization? From a distance, all we can see is 25 to 1, the Republicans outspending the Democrats. What's it like from up close?
Well, let me tell you what that 25-1 gets you. About 2 months ago, Scott Walker was at about 50% in the polls. $30 or $40 million later, Scott Walker is at about 50% in the polling. So the money really isn't doing a lot, aside from what you pointed out, and that's exciting the Republican base. What's going on in the ground of Wisconsin right now is the Obama for America campaign. The national, the DNC has come in as well with money. Everybody's coordinating together, working really hard to get out the vote. We know as Democrats the only way we're going to beat the governor is to get out the vote, and we feel very good about what we have in place right now. And there's no doubt I've been to rallies all over the state. I was in one in Madison the other day. I've been all over the state, north, south, east, west, and all the Democrats are really getting fired up. They know what's at stake here.
In terms of the Democratic Party and how seriously they are taking this race, obviously you've been right at the heart of this from the very beginning. Tom Barrett, who's the Democratic candidate right now, right in this right from the beginning. Everybody who's talking about this on TV is fully invested in this. Are Democrats around the country taking Wisconsin as seriously as you can tell I think they should? I mean, do you feel supported in the way? I mean, Scott Walker on the right is a cause célèbre for Republicans coast to coast.
Well, it's more or less Scott Walker Incorporated. That's where all the money is coming from for him. Obviously, if you take a look at the amount of money that the governor's raised compared to, let's say, the state of Wisconsin, where he's the governor, as opposed to the rest of the country, a lot of his money is coming from out of the state. As far as Democrats are concerned, the DNC has come in. They've given the party about $1.4 million. And again, all of the offices, it's about 60 Obama for America offices, along with another 30 or 40 offices throughout the state of Wisconsin. So we're getting up to about 100 offices throughout the state who are going to coordinate and get the vote out and do all sorts of things like that. So I feel really good about that. If people, Democrats around the country, really want to help out, they can go to barrettforwisconsin.com. They can chip in that way. But you're right, Rachel. A lot of what's going on here in Wisconsin bodes either good or bad for the rest of the country, depending on what happens here on June 5th.
John, in any normal campaign, not to be too blunt about it, but anybody outspent 25 to 1 in a normal campaign loses the election. And you guys, I mean, I hear what you're saying about getting get out the vote effort and the sort of ramping up that's happened on this tight time frame you've had after the primary. Do you feel like your side has a Hail Mary? Do you have a patented underdog plan to try to pull this out? Or is it just really sticking to the fundamentals at this point and counting on your ground game?
Well, it's sticking to the fundamentals, but we're honestly not that far behind. As I said, Governor Walker's at 50% in just about every poll that you take a look at. And keep in mind, that's $30 to $40 million ago he was at 50%. He hasn't moved. I got to believe that Governor Walker has probably reached as high as he's going to reach in the polls, and he has nowhere but to fall. At the same time, Tom Barrett in the latest poll is at 48%. So again, it gets down to the ground game. It gets down to every single Democrat and independent who doesn't like what Governor Walker's been doing here in the state of Wisconsin to get out and vote on June 5th. And again, we have plans in place to do that. You can't go anywhere. In fact, you can't even have a thought to yourself without it being some sort of campaign message, June 5th, June 5th, get out and vote. So the Democrats, again, are going to rally around that. And keep in mind, we understand what Governor Walker has done to Wisconsin, and we understand what Governor Walker intends to do to Wisconsin if he gets to finish out his term. So this race is that important.
Wisconsin State Senator John Erpenbach, thanks very much for talking with us tonight, sir. Good luck next week. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, Rachel.
Senator Erpenbach mentioned there the website that you can visit. Can we go back for a second? Senator mentioned the website there that you can visit to donate to the Tom Barrett side of the election. I should mention also that if you would like to donate to the Governor Walker side of the election, it's scottwalker.com in the interest of giving you both websites. Now you have them both. All right. Best new thing in the world is coming up now with 100% more stuff stolen from Nazis.